You've probably heard the story of the walls of Jericho, right? The trumpets, the shouting, the walls tumbling down. But what if I told you the most important part of that story happens before a single note is played? This ancient account, it's not really about military strategy. It's about a God who declares victory before the battle even starts, and who fights in ways that just completely defy human logic.
Okay, let's just start with this one line, because it unlocks absolutely everything. Before any marching, any shouting, God speaks to Joshua. And you've got to notice the grammar here. It is so important. He doesn't say, I will give you Jericho. He says, I have given you Jericho. It's in the past tense. It's already an accomplished fact. In the mind of God, it is a done deal.
And that right there, that's the question that changes everything. It's the key to understanding not just this story, but really the nature of faith itself. Because everything that follows, the marching, the trumpets, the shout, that isn't what causes the victory. It's the celebration of a victory that God has already secured.
Now, to really appreciate this victory, we first have to wrap our minds around just how impossible the situation was. Let's set the scene. After 40 long years in the wilderness, the people of Israel are finally on the doorstep of the Promised Land. And what's standing right in their way? The fortress of Jericho.
See, Jericho wasn't just some town. Archaeologically, it's one of the oldest cities on the entire planet, and it was engineered to be completely impenetrable. We're talking massive, double walls built on a steep embankment. For a nation of former slaves with zero siege equipment, this was the textbook definition of impossible. And the original Hebrew word used in the text, sager, paints an even more intense picture. It means to be sealed shut, like a tomb or a womb. Nothing gets in and nothing gets out. It's like God intentionally puts his people in front of this giant locked door just to make it crystal clear that he's the only one who holds the key.
Okay, so you have this impossible fortress. You'd expect God to hand down some brilliant, innovative military strategy, right? Some secret weapon? Well, let's take a look at God's actual battle plan. It was less of a military operation and more like a divine parade.
I mean, let's be real. By any human standard, this is completely absurd. Marching in silence, blowing some horns, shouting, it makes zero military sense, and that is precisely the point. God is teaching his people right from the get-go that his ways are not our ways.
You see, every single element in this bizarre plan was just saturated with meaning. This wasn't random. It was a carefully choreographed statement about who God is and how he works. It's like a sermon on the move.
So at the very center of this procession, you have the Ark of the Covenant. And we need to be clear, this wasn't some kind of magic box. It represented the very throne, the very presence of God himself. So this means it wasn't really Israel marching around Jericho. It was the King of the universe, in person, circling an enemy stronghold and declaring, "This is mine."
And the symbolism just gets richer. You see the number 7 over and over and over. In the Bible, 7 is the number of divine completion, of covenant. God is basically saying, this is it. The promise is being fulfilled right now. And the shofar, the ram's horn, that sound was the sound of Jubilee, the year when all slaves were set free and all debts were canceled. It's literally the sound of liberation.
And what about the silence? I mean, can you just imagine the discipline that took? An entire army marching day after day with no war cries, no taunts, nothing. This silence was a profound act of trust. It forced Israel to stop relying on their own noise, their own strength, and to just watch what God was about to do. They were saying with their bodies, we can't do this. Only you can.
But even in this massive, epic story of divine power, God's plan suddenly zooms in with laser focused on a single, unlikely person inside those city walls. And this is where the story gets so deeply personal. Her name is Rahab. And let's be clear about who she is. By every standard, she is the ultimate outsider, a Canaanite, an enemy of Israel, a prostitute on the absolute lowest rung of the social ladder. She is the last person on earth you would ever expect God to notice, which of course makes her the perfect candidate for his grace. Now here's this incredible detail. Rahab is told to hang a scarlet thread from her window as a sign. But the Hebrew word for that thread is tikva. And while yes, tikva can mean cord, its primary, number one meaning throughout the rest of the Bible is hope. Rahab didn't just hang a red rope out her window. She literally hung a scarlet hope into the middle of a hopeless situation. And the result of this act of faith? It is just breathtaking. Not only is Rahab and her family saved from destruction, but she is grafted into the people of God.
So much so that centuries later, if you open up the very first chapter of the New Testament, in the genealogy of Jesus Christ himself, you'll find her name, Rahab. Her scarlet hope led directly into the bloodline of the Messiah.
Okay, so let's zoom back out. Because this whole event at Jericho, it isn't just a moment in history. It's a profound preview. It's a trailer for an even greater, more permanent victory to come.
You just can't make this stuff up. The name Joshua in Hebrew is Yehoshua, which means the Lord saves. Centuries later, that exact same name, Yehoshua, gets shortened a bit to Yeshua, the name Jesus. It's the same name. The first Joshua, Yehoshua, leads his people into a physical promised land. The final Joshua, Yeshua, leads his people into the true promised land of eternal rest with God.
Now, we've got to talk about the most difficult part of this story, the part that makes us all uncomfortable, the command to destroy everything, which is known as Harem. This wasn't about plunder or looting. In fact, it was the opposite. Israel was forbidden from taking any of it for themselves. It was a solemn, terrifying act of divine judgment on a culture that had been spiraling into deep moral darkness for 400 years.
But here's the incredible turn, the connection to the gospel. That same righteous, terrifying judgment that we all deserve for our own sin, well, it wasn't ultimately poured out on us. Instead, God poured it out on his own Son at the cross. The fall of Jericho's physical walls was a foreshadowing of the moment when the true spiritual walls of sin and death came crashing down forever because of the victory of Jesus.
So what does all this mean? What does this ancient story about crumbling walls have to do with you right here, right now? Especially when you're facing what feels like an impossible, impenetrable wall in your own life.
I mean, really think about it for a second. What's your Jericho? Is it an addiction? A broken relationship? A fear or anxiety that has you on complete lockdown? That feeling of sagar, of being completely sealed shut with no way in and no way out.
See, the point of Jericho is not to give you a 5-step plan for how to fight harder to knock down your walls. It's a call to stop fighting in your own strength altogether. It's an invitation to start walking by faith, celebrating a victory that has already been won for you by Jesus. Your job isn't to generate the power, it's to trust the one who already has all of it.
And the New Testament just puts the perfect summary on all of it. It doesn't say, by the power of their shouting the walls fell. It says, by faith the walls of Jericho fell. Faith was the key. Faith in the God who had already spoken the outcome.
And so, that's the question for all of us, isn't it? On the other side of your wall, Jesus is walking, patiently, purposefully, circling your life with his grace. He isn't asking for your strength. He's inviting your trust. Because your victory, your freedom, it has already been spoken in the perfect tense. The only question left is, will you believe it?